that there,
Absolutely. Yes,
we have perhaps a more phenomenological, more
right.
consciousness-based sense of what an open society is or could be, because that quality of openness is not something that you find in the West in terms of our society.
Oh, you inspired me so much, Elizabeth, now that when we finish the conversation, I'm going to write about that something out on the Facebook in Hungarian for the Hungarians. So that open society and
it's not
personal.
Soros. It's not
And
Soros.
Soros, absolutely.
But just to think about the you know, the deeper meaning and I think this is something that Thomas has been preoccupied with lately, but you know, just think about the deeper meaning of what openness is. That openness not about permission, not about but about a quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a quality and relation to life that is not fixed.
Absolutely.
Because very simply spoken, and to break down something like open society to a dialogical context like here right now, what does it mean that we 7 people that we're talking here right now are able to meet in openness? Or are we even? And what does it mean to meet in openness? That's not Popper, that's not Soros, that's not kind of Western modernist understanding. It's just, is there fixed understanding how we have to come together, or is there some deep trust between us that basically without preconditions, there is a meeting space that we trust in, that something can unfold between us that is beyond our control. This kind of openness is something that is also, as I understand, a connection between dialogue practice and mindfulness. Or to put Nadia here on the spot, because she's with us, Nadia really is very into understanding dialogue practice as a form of collective mindfulness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. Go ahead, Nadia. Yes.
Yeah, and I think also there is a big gift in discovering the fragility of life together in this. Because what I got from what you said, Agota, I really realize that all those big tensions, culturally and politically, this is not something that people can bear as an individual. And the way how you are opening spaces is really, first of all, bearing witness together how fragile life is. Absolutely. And how fragile we as human beings are. And I really realize in listening to you that being together in this fragility already changes the whole situation, because it is really empowering to see being together in this, and that this is a potential.
As I was listening to you, Nadia, something came into my mind from very early times of dialogue. Out of those 2 years of dialogue project at MIT, after that, somebody who became very famous later on, Juanita Brown with the World Cafe. Juanita initiated with a friend of hers an international women dialogue, you know, and it went on for 10 years. I'm yearning for that. We got together for a week. Most of us, there was a core group when new people came. But anyway, it was just for 1 week, you know, like Bohm proposed, just to come together and see. And in that, one of those dialogues, I think there was more of a felt sense of being together than just the mind. And I remember once somebody said in the emergent process of the dialogue, I just realized that maybe the major reason why people are fearful of listening to the others is because if you really deeply listen, then this fragility comes to the surface and you may be changed just by listening. And so if we don't manage as a collective to get into this field of trust, which you describe, then the fear is always there. And because of the fear, we don't dare to listen in a way that something happens on a different level. But again, my language, as I mentioned, tér. So tér is space in that sense. And when, for example, Erwin Laszlo talks about nowadays the intelligence of the cosmos and talks about this intelligence of what the Vedic tradition called the Akasha field, then in Hungarian we have the same word for that as well. So for the field, we call tér, which again is connected with society. And so as you mentioned, Thomas, I believe if we manage to create this safe space, or which seems like in order to experience that we need to dive into the field, what we call field, in general, in English, then we have the potentiality of being with our fragility, as Nadia you say, and probably that opens to a very different social network to unfold, which would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I think there is a lot happening. You know, it's like in small groups of people, like the 7 of us now, or gatherings. All of us go to different gatherings, and we already managed to develop that kind of sensing of that quality. So in a sense, it's almost like humanity is seeding the potentialities collectively for this emergent global space to happen. And at the same time, we hear that nature is changing, nature beings are changing. They are feeling more connected to us as humans. So I hope I'm going to live a bit longer so that I can
find out what happens next.
Absolutely.
There's something I would like to highlight listening to you, because when you're talking to this field, and even when you're basically opening up in the end to being basically you are talking something like a field that holds all of society and maybe even on a global scale, something as a field. The way you're talking, you're not just referring to an idea of a field. You're talking to something that is a collective experience as we are talking. You're talking to something that is experiential, accessible to me. I relate to what you're saying, not just as an idea. I also can hold that part. But there's something in my experience, my sense is that you're talking to the same thing that I'm experiencing too. And this is something only possible in dialogue. Because only in dialogue we hold in the presence living fields of consciousness. And that's a completely different relationship of also ideas unfolding, because this does not exist in the mental space.
Right.
The way I hear you, what I hear is not accessible to my mind. I have to open with different faculties to hear this part of it, if I don't misunderstand, but how I hear you, where you're talking from, and what you're talking to. But go ahead.
Don't mistake me, because I love English, and I wish I could speak many other languages. I tried German, for example, but it was very difficult for me. Or I started actually Norwegian, but it didn't get very far at the end, or I forgot everything, which I did. But Russian, not mentioning Russian, which was 12 years, and I still don't know. So there is something about English for me, which stayed with me. But in Hungarian, this is what I'm hearing, that the quality of understanding is truly resonating together with a sensing field or a feeling field. And it's, again, just recently I realized that, and this is how we get touched. And that's what I'm hearing from you. Now, believe me or not, we have the same word for all three, the root. So I reach out and touch you, bodily,
Mm.
air. Then you feel it, and I feel it. That is eres with a Z. And when we really start to feel one another, then I am ertem. So the Z moves into the T, you know, the shift of the same consonant, basically. And so in full understanding, I need the feeling aspect and somehow this touching aspect, which you describe. I think that's pretty important
Yeah.
for us all.
What's part of what strikes me about that is the touching and the feeling. If I can make this distinction, are not simply or the second touching is not simply emotional. It's presence oriented. It's existence oriented.
Right.
It's I in my selfness, in myself, I am touched by the presence of you.
Right. And that's when I become alive.
Yeah, and I become alive.
And in Hungarian, you know the thing of the two words R and L. They are also the same. In many languages, interchangeable.
Yeah.
And so air is to touch.
Yeah.
And el to live. Absolutely, as you say.
To live is to be touched. To be alive is to be touched.
Absolutely.
And that then brings us back to the fragility that Nadia was speaking about. Because that touching is also...
It's a very delicate process. Yeah. You can't just grab. Yeah. Absolutely. And actually a tiny little stream, let's say, coming out of the Black Forest, you know, which might add up to the Danube eventually. That, Thomas, we are at home, aren't we?
Yeah.
that tiny little stream, brook, or whatever that is in English, is also air in Hungarian.
Interesting.
So it just starts to come out.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same word, like the understanding you described, the way you described it, Thomas. I think it's just like a small little brook of clarity or understanding, which emerges in us, or something like that.
But it's interesting because we're working. I mean, when we speak about these small groups around that the whole, in a sense, is trying to, through awakenings in these small groups and these different gatherings and so forth. For some reason, that connects with me to the small little streams that come through the rocks.
Right.
You know, that will create the river of life, or the rivers of life that are needed on this planet.